Okay, we are live. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Leadership Live with Chris and JJ. Um, how you doing today, Chris?
Morning. I'm doing great, JJ. How about you?
Oh man, I'm still kind of pre-coffee. My daughter had some pep band stuff last night, so I'm a little bit groggy yet this morning.
Well, I hear you. I'm drinking this hotel
hotel room,
coffee. So
hotel room coffee, a little
yeah,
bit watered down, but it still does the trick, right?
exactly. Gives me half the kick that I need.
Half the kick. Yeah,
Yeah,
man. Well, I'm excited to go into our conversation today. It looks like we're going to talk about how not all relationships are created equal. But
yeah,
first, let's go into our regular announcements, and then we can get right to the show.
let's go.
Okay, so Leadership Live is brought to you by Victory Leadership Coaching, home of the Warrior Leadership Coaching Certification and First Time Leaders course for new managers. Don't forget to check us out at victoryleadershipcoaching.com. You can also buy our books at amazon.com. The books are Why Organizations Should Develop Their Leaders, it's a pocket guide, and Warrior Leadership, the journey from coach to entrepreneur. And as always, don't forget to like and subscribe to all of our videos on our YouTube channel, Spotify channel, and wherever you see them. Okay. Well, so I'm excited about this one because last time we talked about, you know, kind of the difference between a transactional relationship at work and real true relationships at work, and now we're going to dive a little bit deeper
hmm
into how not all relationships are created equal. So I'd be interested in getting your point of view first, just to get the conversation going, if you're willing.
Absolutely. Uh, I really like this topic a lot because, yeah, not all relationships are equal, and there are the relationships with people, and I'm going to keep this at the professional level right now, right? This is in the workplace. The same probably holds true for, if you're part of a social group or whatever, but there are relationships where you meet someone and you like click and you've got something in common, right? You share a sense of humor, you share certain, core values and outlooks and things. So when you find those people that you connect with naturally, that's that can form a whole different type of relationship, right? The two of you can get along. Like it's easy to have the unspoken conversations when you're really like jiving with somebody. But then on the totally other side of the spectrum are the people that you're, I'm going to say, for lack of a better word, forced to have a relationship with, right? This could be the coworker that um, you don't share anything in common with. It could be the person in the social group that they're married to someone who's part of the social group. So, you and your spouse go and you're like the tag alongs and you have nothing in common with this other person. But for the sake of the group, it's like, look, we're gonna do our best to get along and be cordial. We're not gonna be rude to each other or whatever. So those are two extremes in that case, right? When we're talking about work, you're there to get a job done. So as long as you can have that kind of mutual understanding of we are both here to accomplish X. We don't have to be friends outside of work. We don't have to go, train jujitsu together or go for long walks in the park or anything like that. We're here to get the job done. So let's respect each other's contributions to achieving those goals, and we're going to get along just fine. But we're not going to lunch together, things like that. Can those relationships form into something different and stronger over time? Absolutely. As you get to know somebody, maybe you do find some common ground. But I think to kick us off, that's been my experience. You've got these two extremes. You you click with someone and you can form a relationship. Someone else, you just have a common goal, and that's the basis of the relationship, doesn't go any further.
Yep, and it's important to keep those because whether people like it or not, when we go to work, we're all in the customer service role. And so, I mean,
Right.
if you look at it from that perspective and you kind of take yourself out of the equation, everything needs to work together in a succinct way so that the work can get done. If you're holding
Yep.
if you're walking around work holding grudges and saying that guy pissed me off, I'm not going to help him anymore, and saying all that petty stuff that can't exist outside of the workplace, then that really doesn't serve anybody there, because everyone really, regardless of how you feel about one another, you have to work together. And so
Right.
you have to care to a certain extent about that person, because and even if it's not necessarily about their them and their family, maybe it's more along the lines of what their role is and how you can support that person, because at the end of the day, the work's got to get done. Everyone's there to earn a paycheck. If you want your job to be easier, even if you don't directly interact with that person on a regular basis, that person that you may not like, that person can still affect your role at some point, even if you're not directly interacting with them all the time. So, but there's more
Yeah,
to that.
you're
Yeah,
absolutely
go ahead.
right.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, yeah, you're absolutely right. And there are times that those conversations need to be had if you've got the other person who's not having the same outlook as you, is like, hey, look, we're both here to get something done, and they allow certain personal things to get in the way. That becomes a leadership thing, to have the conversation with that person. It's happened to me. I worked with someone who, they were extreme on the political spectrum, way different from what I believe in. I do not bring those beliefs to work, right? Like, I'm here to get the job done. And I can respect people's beliefs. Like, that's one of the great things about living in America, right? We can all have our own beliefs, but there's a time and a place. And I don't want to limit anyone's freedom, but don't bring your beliefs into something that's going to have a negative effect on the combined outlook or the combined goals you're trying to achieve. So from a leadership standpoint, if you're feeling that friction, you've got to break it down and say, hey, look, we may not believe in the same views outside of these four walls of work, but in work, we need to be able to get together, because if we don't, then it's going to affect your job, my job, the service we provide to our customers. Like, you can run down the entire list. You've got to be neutral.
Yep.
So I didn't mean to cut you off, but
Oh no, you're fine.
yeah.
So, but that, let's talk about the this is a kind of a professional podcast where we're talking about how things relate to the workforce. And so you spiked another idea that I'd kind of like to bring to the surface. And so a lot of people don't understand from the ground level, and sometimes they forget when they get to the senior level what the difference in relationship dynamic is as you start kind of moving up through the ranks. And that's really what the difference is a lot of times, other than the fact that you have to manage different levels of leadership and stuff like that. But there's also a different relationship dynamic when you're at the ground level. There's a lot more, we'll call it smoking and joking, and him hawing and gossiping, and there's a lot more of that. Once you get up to that supervisor / first line manager level, there's a lot more of, that's probably the most stressful position you can have in a job, because you not only have just probably gotten separated from your peers if you're working in the same place, and now you're having to figure out how to handle those people, and maybe additional people, and then create relationships with those ones where you were able to just kind of slough off because they had nothing to do with what you were doing when you were driving the forklift.
Yeah.
And now they're there, but now you have to manage priorities coming from up higher, and you have to kind of look forward in the future to start figuring out how your team can fit into the bigger mission. There's just a big dynamic there that just has to change. And so you have to have a certain level of seriousness, and you have to slowly start stepping back from people, which kind of distances those relationships just a little bit.
Yeah.
And I think that's really the relationship dynamic that changes. The higher up you move, the different audience you have, the different conversations you have. And in addition to that, you start getting farther and farther away from the ground level people. And so those relationships all change throughout the years.
You know, you're 100% right. And the key word that you said there is slowly. When you're being promoted, and yes, you absolutely have to change the relationship dynamics with the people that you had, your coworkers, because if part of your routine with the people on the crew was that on Fridays we're going to the bar and we're hanging out there for 4 hours after work, you can't do that anymore once you are in a leadership role. However, you don't. If you get promoted Wednesday, that next Friday, you don't just not go, right?
Right.
You do have to slowly change the relationship, because if you just cut it off now, you can really create that sense of like them versus us, and that is the last thing that you want to do. So maybe you go, follow the routine with the guys. You have one beer, you chit chat with people, and then you're out, right? So you've got to, because at the end of the day, you've got to maintain those relationships for the sake of getting work done.
Sure.
Um, but you can't allow yourself to be seen as now better than the people that you used to be peers with all of a sudden because you just got a promotion. Like, that's where people are like, oh, his ego is blown up, or you can really damage relationships by making that like hard right turn.
Yep.
um but it is so important though to stay connected as best you can to what's going on the ground. So you can't just disappear. If you used to be, someone who worked in a warehouse and maybe you drove a forklift, using your example, that doesn't mean that once you get promoted, you never set foot in that warehouse again. Like, those were people that you built relationships with. You've got to maintain those, but they just have to be different. You've got to be more careful about the things that you say. Um, it's not uncommon on the ground for people to gossip and just bullshit, and you can't participate in that stuff anymore once you have become, once you've gotten promoted into a leadership role. Doesn't mean that you can't joke around. Doesn't mean that you can't. Doesn't that you have to be all business all the time, because I think that can also damage the relationship. Like, there's got to be that levity. I'm such a big believer in, like, I love laughing. Anyone who works with me can tell you, like, that dude laughs at least a half dozen times in a day, because I think that helps break up the monotony and get things done. It's part of my personality, but you just have to be careful of what you're joking about, how you're saying it. And, so yeah, you can't totally remove yourself, and doing it slowly, like you just said, is such a big thing that I think a lot of people get wrong, because they get this promotion and either they're like, I got to be super buttoned up now, or, all right, I'm still going out and I'm going to go to the bar for 4 hours on Friday, and I'm going to leave my leadership hat back at work. It doesn't happen that way.
No, no. As a matter of fact, you got to be really, really careful. And those people that you created friendships with on the team when you moved up, I think this is one dynamic that not enough people talk about when they take a leadership position. Their immediate supervisor doesn't really discuss this with them, but you know there are some conversations to be had with those people that maybe your kids are friends with their kids, and you know, your wife is friends with their wife outside of work and
Mm-hmm.
stuff like that. You know, not always, but sometimes those people tend to really kind of want some special treatment because maybe not directly, but inadvertently, you know, you guys were friends. And so,
Mm-hmm.
you know, the whole thing where, you know, you might have these difficult tasks. Maybe if you go straight to them, they'll be like, "Hey man, I thought we were cool," or something like that. Or there are many different kind of conversations that take place. Oh, but I mean, you know what I'm talking about. But you know, just
Yeah.
getting ahead of that, and this is really important. I always had this talk with guys because when I was in the military, we would tend to try to promote people and put them in another section. We thought that was very, very
Okay.
important
To avoid that.
to avoid
Right.
that. But if they
Mm-hmm.
stayed and it was unavoidable, we would say, "Hey, look, I know you were friends with Joe Snuffy, Billy Joe, Jim Bob, and Sue, and you know, it might be worthwhile for you to pull them all off to the side individually, and just let them know that you know you. I mean, your kids can still be friends with each other. Your wives can still be friends with each other. You know, you guys have to kind of walk a tight line, but if you're careful about it, that doesn't have to necessarily go away. You just have to be more careful about it. But let them know that when you're making decisions at work, you know, the friendship is taken out of it. And if that person is
Yeah.
truly your friend, and let them know this, if that person is truly your friend, then they're going to respect the decisions that you make for the well-being of the entire team, not just in favor of that one-on-one relationship that you might have. And
Yeah. And
that's an important thing that a lot of leaders don't discuss with their new managers.
no, you're right. It's probably one of the reasons why a lot of new managers fail because they don't get that mentorship from people that are more senior. Um, but it's also something that comes back to you and I during season one had multiple conversations about emotional intelligence
Yep.
and how that is so important to develop as a leader. And you also have to keep in mind that you as a leader may be developing your emotional intelligence. The people that you have now kind of risen above aren't looking at it in the same way. So now, not only are you needing to give yourself a tune up from the neck up, you need to be helping your people, just like you said, having those conversations like, hey, look, we may be at the family function on Sunday, sitting around the barbecue and having fun, but come Monday, you've got to know that I still have your back. You and I are still friends, but there are decisions that need to be made from a professional perspective that our friendship kind of takes it out of the equation. But that also doesn't mean that you don't throw your friends a bone sometimes.
Correct.
So that's where the
Yeah.
balance,
Oh
right?
yeah.
That's where the dichotomy comes in.
Well, maybe you know, I've always found, and not everybody does this, but I've always made the suggestion with that when people are making, if there's a always a new task that comes up every week and it's there's a rhythm to it, then put everybody on a list
Mm-hmm.
and just go straight down that list. Don't treat anybody. I mean, I was always taught in the military, don't be, you know, that you should always be fair and impartial. And that's both for rewards, punishment, you know, acknowledgement. It doesn't matter. I mean, yes, everybody needs to be treated, you know, as their own individual. But when it comes to certain things, you don't want anybody to think that they're getting special treatment. And
Right.
you also don't want somebody to think that they're getting picked on more than anybody else. And there's another dichotomy there, but there's so many of them. My gosh, you know
Yeah.
what? Let me make it easy for everybody. Just go read Jocko's book. It's a lot easier that way.
That's right.
no, no, but
Yeah.
this is why we have these conversations, Chris, because it's important to note that there's a fine line. If you go too far below that line or too far above that line, you know, it's not necessarily wrong, but when you notice it, it's very important that you not only admit it, but you have the wherewithal to course correct and let everybody know, hey, this is what you did, this is what I did. I feel like I was leading you down the wrong path, or I maybe I took this too far, whatever the case may be. And just let them know that I'm gonna correct this, and I'm gonna start moving in this direction, because I can't keep doing things the way I've been doing things.
Yeah. Um, you also, yeah, the relationships, I think we all want to have good relationships, but you have to realize that that's kind of a fairy tale. You're not always going to have good relationships with everybody.
Mm-mm.
But as long as you can both be aligned on what the outcomes are, we can agree to disagree,
Mm-hmm.
as long as we're both moving in the same direction.
And I think professionally, it's important to note that as long as your heart is in the right place, as long as you have humility, as long
Mm-hmm.
as you admit your mistakes, and let people know that you're human and you expect them to be human, you actually talk to people about more than just work all the time, and you try to let them know that you're acknowledging that they're people and they're just not another cog in the wheel, and you give these people a little bit of extra responsibility every once in a while so that they feel empowered. I mean, there are many things that we can go over, but if you're treating people like people, regardless of whether you like each other, that doesn't always matter. I mean, I think that a lot of times as leaders, we have to, you talked about emotional intelligence. Well, sometimes we have to kind of pull emotion out of it, because if
Yeah.
we start holding grudges with, well, I guess it doesn't matter with anybody, with people that are senior, subordinate, or even our peers. I mean, we're going to be less likely to be approached by whoever that person is. And if that person needs us and they look past us, and then somebody's like, well, you used to always work with JJ, what happened? And they said, well, we don't get along anymore, and blah, blah, blah. There's going to be a negative connotation towards you and that person. It's not just going to be one of you. And so there,
Yeah.
a negative view rather. And so you got to be careful with that, because when it comes to relationships at work, it's not really about I like you or I don't like you. It's about balance and making sure that the machine still continues to operate. Now I know I said that we have to treat people like people, but in order for the machine to operate, everybody has to feel like this is an environment that they feel welcome in, and that they can continue coming to every day, that they feel like they're empowered in that environment, and that, regardless of how other people feel about them, there's not going to be that negative crap, because that stuff, you know don't bring that negative crap to work. This is work.
Mm-hmm.
Don't let that affect what we're doing. So relate, you're right. And a lot of people say this is my work family. I always challenge people to say, don't call people at work your family,
No,
because you can't fire your family,
that's right.
but you can definitely throw somebody out the door here. Well, technically, I guess in some ways you can fire your family, but but it's different. I mean, you can
It is.
literally disclude that person from the team, and
Yeah,
then they're never going to be there again.
that's right.
That doesn't
Yeah,
happen with family.
no, and I say the same thing, about the whole considering work to be family. There's When people think of family, they think of compassion, they think of, treating people right, doing the right thing. Like that stuff all needs to happen at work, but there's a fine line.
Yep.
Um, but the other thing too is that as a leader, you it's your job to build the relationships. And so even if you do get elevated, or maybe you shift into a totally different division of the company, right? Similar to what you were saying about the military, like we're going to take you out of A company, put you in B company. You don't know any of those people there. It's kind of a clean slate. It's still up to you to build the relationships. It's up to you to find the common ground, because it can't just be transactional, right? You've got to find something in common, because that's what really helps you to be productive. It helps
Yep.
everyone to be productive. It makes the Sunday nights getting ready for work Monday way more tolerable for that other person, right? And so that's one of the things that you need to take on as a leader. We've talked about this before as well, is that relationships are like the foundation of leadership. You've got to have relationships with people. So that's going to require some extra effort from you sometimes to find that common ground. And let's go back to the total opposite ends of the political spectrum beliefs. I don't care where you fall on that. But if you're both from Philadelphia, like me, maybe you can agree that you both like the Eagles. You can agree that you both hate the Dallas Cowboys. So you've got to find some common ground, regardless of those other things, because talking about work at work all day can suck. Like, if I'm just being honest, like, you've got to have something personal in there, for that connection, because relationships make the world go round. And when you need that extra, man, I need people to stay for an extra hour on Thursday to get this big order out the door. Those relationships help people to see you as more than just, my boss is making me stay. Okay, I'm here to help the team. And I see that my boss is down here too. He's helping us out. So it's up to you.
Correct.
Don't think that it's up to your people, that once you've moved on, for them to try to find that bridge to the relationship, or when you have personal differences. It's totally falls on your shoulders. Back to the old saying, there are no bad teams, only bad leaders. Be a good leader for your team.
Well, and it seems cliche, but I'm going to keep on saying this over and over and over again. When you are a manager or whatever position you hold that's higher than just the guy that's on the ground, you really have to think about servant leadership, because,
Mm-hmm.
at the end of the day, if you're putting the needs, the welfare, everything of your subordinates, and not just your subordinates, but your seniors and your peers before your own, when you go into work, and you're doing everything in the good of the overall mission, then it's easy to take your emotion out of it. And
Mm-hmm.
it's easy for you to be willing to do whatever it takes to make somebody else successful. And if you think that way, when you get promoted to that new manager, or when you go from first line manager up to the next level, and you have to take on a different level of responsibility and learn something completely different, because they're all different at every level, then it's easier, because you go in there, and the first thing you think to yourself is, oh my gosh, well, how can I be supportive at this new role?
Yep.
And then you're just going around and asking a bunch of questions instead of trying to step on everybody else's toes. And when you're trying to be that supportive person, people look at you as that supportive person, and that will serve you as much as it serves them.
Yeah, and it's got to be genuine, JJ. You know, it's you have to want to serve people. If you're in a leadership role and you don't want to serve people, then you probably shouldn't be in a leadership role.
Correct.
So it's got to be genuine. It can't be forced, because people will see right through that. People
Yep.
know when it's like, hey, this is heartfelt. JJ truly has my best interest in mind when he's coming up with these things. They know it, versus like, man, this dude is just reading off a script. He's a robot. Nobody wants to work for a robot.
True. And in addition to that, don't promote don't just promote your high performers and force them into that next level, whether it's from first line to supervisor, or if it's from manager to director. It doesn't matter. Don't just force promote your people within your organization. Have a
Mm-hmm.
conversation about it and make sure that's something that they want to do, because if you force
Absolutely.
somebody into a position that they don't want, they're going to perform like they don't want it.
I've seen that backfire, and it's 100% true. It feels great to be that high performer on the team, and the boss comes in and says, "Hey, Joe Snuffy, you've been killing it here. I'm going to promote you." And at first, the person's like, "Dude, I'm getting acknowledged. I'm getting promoted." And then one of the reasons that they were so good at their job is because they loved their job. So now you're taking them out of something that they loved. They're like, man, a week sets in and then buyer's remorse. And it's like, I really don't want this.
Yep.
So yes, you've got to have those conversations, and you've got to talk about everything that comes along with what that promotion is.
It's true. That's part of nurturing people for a new role.
Yep.
And I know we're kind of out of time here, but when it comes to promoting people, I think that making sure that you have a conversation with them beforehand, like Chris just said, and talking to them about what the new role entails, why why you feel like they would be the best pick for that role, and then asking them if that is something that they want to do, and then asking them if they're ready to do it, even if they do want it. This is all part of coaching. If you coach people into a new role rather than just throw them into the deep water and hoping that they can keep their chin up, or even if you throw them a pair of arm floaties, that doesn't mean they're going to do well. You got to make sure that you're promoting the right people that want the job, that are ready for it.
Yep.
And
Absolutely.
and by the way, that can wait. I know how long it takes to hire for a senior position. So if it takes 6 months to hire somebody for a senior position a lot of the time, then why wouldn't you put that 3 to 6 months into getting somebody ready for that new position? There's no reason why you couldn't do that if you're trying to promote internal.
That's right.
So that's all I have to say about that. Chris, do you have any closing comments?
Yeah. Closing comments are, that you as the leader need to take charge of the relationships that are happening, that are forming, that are changing in the workplace as things move. It's up to you to find the common threads so that you can build those relationships, because that's really what gets things done. So yeah, not all relationships are created equal. However, it's up to you to put in the effort to have some kind of baseline relationship, so that you're able to kind of work in harmony and achieve your goals.
Absolutely. That you couldn't have said it. You couldn't. I'm not going to even try to add to that. But what I will do is the end of episode announcements. So in
Yeah.
2 weeks on the 4th, we're going to be doing another episode, and we're going to be talking about definitions of accountability. So just to recap that, for January at 9 o'clock Central Time, 10 o'clock East Coast time. And if you're all the way on that other coast, I suppose that would be about 7 a.m. So,
Yep. Wake up
please
early.
get up. Yeah, get up early so that you can come and check this out. And also, I wanna bring to the surface that on the 8th of January, Warrior Leadership is starting back up again. So if you enjoy those conversations that bridge leadership, coaching, and therapy that I have with Derek, then please tune into that. And that's also going to be at 8:30 in the morning Central Time on Wednesdays. We're going to make it we're going to make it something that you can listen to while you're on the way to work. So,
Awesome.
yeah, just those are my only announcements, and hopefully you guys enjoy this stuff. If you do, and you want to be a sponsor for something like this at your company, please let me know. I'd love to grow all of my shows because I just have a great time doing this stuff, and I think that the topics we discuss are so important. So thank you again for being here with me to chat about this and doing this with me every other week, Chris. And thank you everybody in my audience here and your audience for always tuning in even after the fact. And we'll see you here in a couple of weeks on the 4th, Chris, and we're going to be talking about some accountability.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to it. It's an awesome topic. And yeah, I love doing these shows. I hope people get something out of it. I know that they do. I've gotten comments from people who watch them. Just real quick, a guy that I trained jiu-jitsu with, I was at our gym Christmas party, And he came up to me after our last one. And he said, dude, I was at work on that Saturday. Your live stream popped up on my Instagram and I watched it. He's like, I was dealing with something, the same thing that you guys were talking about. It's like, it's so timely that I'll catch your shows and it just happens to coincide with something that I'm working on. So I know that people are getting something out of it. And I know that we both get that kind of feedback. So this is awesome. I'll close it out on my end by saying, wishing everybody happy holidays, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year. We will see you fresh in the new year, 2025. And it's going to be awesome.
It is going to be awesome. And don't forget, if you like all this content that we put out all the time, like it, subscribe to my YouTube channel. And if Chris has this on his, subscribe to it there as well. And make sure that, if you want to keep the conversation going, if you want to know more about a specific leadership topic, whatever the case may be, just put a comment below. We'd love to hear feedback. We'd love to hear more about what you want to hear, so that we can provide the type of conversations that you need to hear, just like that guy that Chris trained jujitsu with. So anyway, I'll wrap it up. We'll see you all in a couple of weeks. Otherwise, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year. We'll see you next time.
See ya.